Hello everyone, and welcome to our first video on our series on JavaScript. This first video will be an introductory video. Um, this here is our table of contents, so feel free to pause the video and take a look at it. These are all the different topics we're going to cover in this series. For the first video, the introduction, we're going to look at what is JavaScript, a couple different data types, minor built-in methods, and a variable declaration. So what is JavaScript? Alongside HTML and CSS, JavaScript is one of the core technologies of the World Wide Web. It's used to create responsive, interactive elements for web pages, enhancing the user experience. So with HTML, essentially that's what you use to structure your web page. CSS is what you use to style it, and JavaScript is what you use to add some life to it. So you can do cool things like add event handlers, handle user input, etc. JavaScript is synchronous and single-threaded. There's a lot of ambiguity on this online, so you guys definitely take some time to do your own research and kind of like look a little bit more into this. And while it is most well known as the scripting language for web pages, many non-browser environments also use it. So environments such as Node.js, when you're working with the relational database MongoDB, well, the non-relational database MongoDB, um, yeah, etc. There's a couple different uses for JavaScript. JavaScript is not to be confused with the Java programming language. It's often abbreviated as JS for JavaScript. So for all of our JavaScript files where we write our JavaScript code, it's going to have the .js extension on it. Well, so first thing we're going to start off with is just some variable declaration. So in a variable declaration in JavaScript, it's made up of three main parts. The first two are required. The third one is optional at that particular point in time. So we have three keywords, for, let, and const. Those are the three keywords we have to use with our variable declarations in JavaScript. So, cool. So first part, user keyword. So for this one, we're going to use const. Let's say we want to go ahead and call it a water bottle. And if we want, we can go ahead and assign that on the same line as well. So let's assign this to like Fiji. Cool. Awesome. So we just declared our first variable in JavaScript. We have our three parts here. First is the keyword to define the scope of the variable and things like whether you want to be able to reassign it or not. And then we have the name of our water bottle, so our identifier. And then we have our assignment here. We assigned our water bottle variable to the Fiji string. If we want to go ahead and do an example with var or let, for example, we could go ahead and do var city is equal to New York. Or if we want, we could just do, we don't have to go ahead and assign our variable all on the same line. If we want, we could just use one of our keywords. So for this one, we're going to use let. Let's say we call it country. And we could just leave it like that. Okay. In this one, we have our unassigned variable country. Here we have our assigned variables, water bottle and city. So if we want, we can come here over on line 7 and console.log that. So there's a .log method that comes with our console object when you're working with JavaScript, and that just allows you to log stuff into our console so we can essentially view our JavaScript code. So for this one, all right, let's go ahead and do a template literal. So I'm going to use some backticks, and let's say this is our water bottle. Water bottle. Cool. What's going on here? Oh, cool. And now, to make things easier on us, we're just gonna copy and paste these. We're gonna say this is our city. We're going to pass in city to it. And then here we're going to say this is our country. Little typo here. Let's pass in country. Cool. Now let's give that a run and see what we get in our code. This is our water bottle Fiji. This is our city New York. This is our country undefined. That's because we haven't assigned anything yet. It's our country variable. So if we wanted to, we could come over on line 11 and actually finally assign our country. Let's say we want to assign that to, I don't know, let's say Canada. Okay. And so one difference between the const keyword and the var and let is when you use the const keyword with a variable, that variable, you cannot assign that variable to anything else. Like once you assign it, it can't be reassigned. So for example, let's say we wanted to, so we're not going to have that restriction with the city variable. So let's go ahead and reassign our city variable. We're going to assign it now to Florida. And now we're going to go ahead and try to assign something else to our water bottle variable that uses the const keyword. So let's try to assign this to the Sani. And now let's put a couple of console logs. So we have country and city right here. And then we have, oh, okay, let's do this instead. So cool. And let's bring our console log of line 14 to after 16, because that's when we try to reassigning our water bottle variable. Let's give it a run. And we get an error. Okay, cool. So first things first, we get all of our things console log, the things we logged earlier, and then we got the things we logged later on after changing some stuff. So we got, this is our country Canada. So we were successfully able to finally assign our variable that we initialized on line 5. Next we have, this is our city Florida. So we were able to successfully reassign our city variable. And then on line 16, we tried reassigning our water bottle variable to the Sani, but we have a bit of an issue because we use the const keyword. Again, we can't reassign a variable that uses the const keyword. So over here, we tried to do that, and that's where we got the error. Intro.js line 16, water bottle equals the Sani, assignment to constant variable. So we can't do that. One way we could fix this, I mean, we could change the const keyword to var or let, or I mean, we could just completely take this line out here because again, we can't reassign a variable. So for example, let's say we change this to var or let. Let's do let, save, and we'll be able to successfully reassign that variable. Cool. This is our water bottle to sign. And also with variable declaration, let me just comment all of this out for now. So we're able to declare multiple variables on one line. So let's say we have we want to go ahead and do this, like const A equals 1, B equals 2, O equals 2, C equals 3. So all those variables, you're essentially declaring them using the const keyword and assigning them on the same line. We could do the same thing with any of the other keywords. Essentially, the reason I'm doing this is just to show you that, again, you can declare multiple variables on one line. You don't even need to assign anything to one of them. So let's try doing a couple of console.logs. This is our a variable. So here I'm just doing regular string concatenation instead of using the approach we used earlier with the template literal. Cool. This is our B variable. And now what I'm gonna do is let's log one of the ones that we declared with let. So let's do D this time. Let's do F because that one we haven't assigned anything yet. And now we're gonna try on here. We're gonna try to reassign one of our variables that we declared with const. So let's do a equals 9 or something, and let's try logging that. See what we get. Save. Come here. We press the up arrow key. We run it, and we get one error. First, we get all of our initial things logged to our console. So this is our a variable 1, b variable 2, d variable 4, and then f variable undefined because we hadn't assigned it anything yet. And then here we get the error, line 19, because we have a declared with the const keyword. We tried reassigning it something else, so we got an error for that. Cool. All right, cool. So we're able to declare multiple variables on one line. And one last thing we're gonna look at in terms of the difference between some of those keywords to declare your variables is just your scoping. So if you go ahead and use, let's say you have a function, let's call it Gucci or something. So any variable that we declare inside of a function, it doesn't matter what keyword we use, const, let, or var, we're not gonna have access to that variable outside of that function. For example, in this, all right, for example, let's do this, const A. Actually, I'm not even gonna assign them anything. Const A, let B, var C. Okay, and now I'm gonna take all of these away. And if we come down here and try logging any one of them, we're not gonna have access to them. So if you try console logging A, all right, I'll just do, let's see if we could just do this and get it all taken care of. Cool. So what do we get? Missing initializer and const declaration. Okay. I don't think that should help our case, but all right. Let's give it a run again. There we go. A is not defined. And the reason we're getting A is not defined when we try logging it on line 28 is because we don't have access to A. We don't have access to A given the current scope. If we try to log B, if we try to see B, it'll be the exact same thing because again, we don't have access to that. C, same thing. So it doesn't matter what keyword we use, if it's inside of a function, we don't have access to function scope. Okay, cool. But now let's say we tried using just any type of regular block scope. So let's say we had like a for loop or something like that. So let's do for I is equal to 0, I is less than 5, I plus plus. Here, if we go ahead and declare, for example, these exact same variables here, we're going to have access to a couple of them. So let's see here, A, B, C. And also, you'll notice that the editor actually gives us some feedback. So based on what I did just now, I already know that var is the only variable I have access to. With const and let, you don't have access to those in any type of block scope. Whether that's a for loop, if you let's say you had like a maybe like a if statement or something like that here, you'll still have access to anything you declare with the var keyword. So let's say we do var u equals 5, save. Well, first of all, let's see what we get for these ABCs that we tried logging using the for loop. Remember with the function scope, we had access to none of them. Let's see which one we have access to using the for loop, inside of the for loop. Okay, so we have A is not defined, so we do not have access to anything we have declared with the const keyword inside of any block scope, whether that's a for loop, if statement, um, I want to say switch statement as well, but any type of block scope, okay? Now let's remove that. Let's see if we have access to, let's see if we have access to the B variable that we declared with the let keyword, which we should not. Cool, we get B is not defined. Again, we don't have access to that block scope with the let keyword. But with the var keyword though, we should have access to that scope. Cool, we're able to log to. Nice. So now, take this out. For example, we have a regular if statement with the var. We should be able to get that 5 logged to our console for us because we declared it with the var keyword. Cool. If we changed it to let or const, we're not going to because at that point, yeah, with let and const, you don't have access to that variable outside of that block scope. So now, oh, I forgot to save the file. We run it. U is not defined. Cool. All right, so I think that's mainly it for variable declaration and some of the different scopes and that type of stuff. All right, cool. Now we're gonna take a look at some data type JavaScript. Cool. So what we're gonna do to make our lives easier, first of all, we're gonna set up a function um, that does some neat stuff for us. So we're gonna call it type check, and in there, all we're doing is console.logging. So we're gonna need to pass in a variable. So we're gonna put an X parameter here, and let's use a nice little template literal. We're gonna say, all right, cool. Let's do this X. So it's gonna show you what X. All right, let's do this variable. Variable. X is of type is of type. I didn't think this through. All right, how do you even do this again? Would it be type of? Yeah, that's how you do it. Type of X. Yeah, I think that should work as intended. Cool. Let's save that and let's give it a shot. So type check. Let's type check 5. See what we get. All right. Now let's give that a run again. We get X is not defined. Why do I have a capital X here? All right, let's save it. Let's give it a run and see. Cool. Variable 5 is of type number. Okay, cool. All right, so all right, now let's look at a couple of different data types. So we have a number here. Now let's type check, for example, a string. So we're gonna call this wood. Let's type check. Let's type check true. Let's go ahead and type check. Let's type check a string with nothing in it, and also let's type check a string with just one space in it. Okay. Next, let's type check. Let's type check undefined. See what we get. Let's type check the big int. So let's go, for example, 2000n. And that's just adding that n at the end of the number is just notation for big int in JavaScript. What final type should we add? Yeah, I think that's fine. Let's leave it at that. Cool. Now if we run this, well, first let's save our file. Cool. Now if we run this, so we get variable 5 is of type number, variable wood is of type string. I don't like how it's saying variable and then the value of the variable. Value x of variable. Because the variable is going to be x every single time. The placeholder is the value of the variable we're worried about. So value of, all right, yeah, let's do it. Let's just leave it this like that. Cool. All right. This doesn't really matter for our purposes. I just like things as descriptive as possible. All right, cool. Value 5 is of type number. Value wood is of type string. Value true is of type boolean. Value is of type string, and that's when we had the strings with nothing in there. String with just a space is of type string. Value undefined is of type undefined. 2000 of type big int. Cool. So for example, let's say we change this to like a number, 5 as well, but because it's within the quotes, it's going to be treated as a string. So true and false are our two Boolean values. For these is good. And also another thing you could do for big int, instead of having it like this, you could use you could do something like this instead. You could do big int 2000, and we should get something that's we should get basically the exact same stuff. All right, cool. Type number, type string, because we have it in the quotes, Boolean, big int. All right. I think that just about wraps it up for our intro video. If you like the video, please feel free to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video.